recording. Yeah, the recording has started. I think someone else also if any of you also recording tool, do recording, just for safekeeping. Anush, do you have anything for recording?
Yeah, I have not recorded anything yet. Let me check.
Does any of you have? Arjun, Emmanuel, Mercy? Does any of you have any recording tools? You can also start recording. Sorry?
Come again. So you mean the recording tool?
Yeah, if you can record this session, right, that will be great. I'm also recording it. I'm just saying for redundancy purpose.
Yes.
Which tools you are using? Yeah.
I'm using OBS Studio, but there is also like that Chrome extension that we have. That is also the recorder.
Yeah, that one previously I used that one, but
Mm.
that is not recording. There
Okay.
was some problem.
Okay.
I have that extension.
Okay. I think this should also be good enough. I think OBS Studio should be good enough.
Yeah, just go ahead. Even I am also recording.
Okay. 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 Great. I'll start. Yeah. Just one second. Let me just close some unnecessary programs. Okay. Okay, we'll start now. So I'll just show you the folder structure first on the terminal. So this is the Spring Boot template repository. So in that, if we see, there are some scripts are there, and then there are some directories. So the entire code that lives into src directory, and in the root folder there are a few other things like Bitbucket pipeline is there, and then there are also some helper scripts that we have created, which will help you create the code much faster. And there are also like some obvious scripts that we have, like DropDB, CreateDB, and Start API and all that, right? All the standard scripts that we generally have, that's also all there. So, and also, yeah, I think we'll start the API later, but we'll just do a walkthrough of. So if you want to start the API, you can just run this start API.sh and it'll start your API. And now going through the code structure, the entire code is an src directory. So in src we have got two directories. One is main and one is test. So test is where all the unit test lives, and main is where all the code lives. So inside that, if we go, there is main Java, and then there is a package. So this is the example package that we have created for this template. You can of course give your own name for your own project. And inside that there is a startup point. So all the Spring Boot applications generally have this application. Basically you use this thing called annotation in Java to say that this is the Spring Boot application starting point. So this is very much like our index.js that we have in Node.js. And here we are just starting the app, and also we have done some extra like configuration. If we need to do, we can do that. And that is that. And then there is also a resources folder. So all the APIs we are putting in the resources folder. This is also similar to how we have done it in our Node.js APIs. So for each of the API, you will have a resources folder. And let's say, for example, if we open one of the, let's say users, if we open, in users also we have given like multiple folders. So all the API routes, basically they live inside APIs folder. So you can see here, you can open user controller. So in Spring Boot, basically all the routes are kind of defined using controllers. So in the controller, you declare, you say that this is a REST controller, and inside that you give this kind of mappings. So for each of the routes that you have related to users, right, you will write a method and you will annotate it using this annotation get mapping. So this will become a API on users / ID route, and whenever that API is called, this function will be called. Then similarly for post and patch and delete and for everything, there is a annotation defined. So for example, here is a post mapping. So this is creating a user inside a company. So we have given the route as company ID users. So this is the company ID. So inside a company, we are creating a user. So these are the APIs. Then I'll go into detail of each of them. But first we'll just take an overview through everything. So there are APIs, then also similar to that, like there is another folder called entities. So entities generally have DB models. So whatever tables or what we have, right, for that there is a map model class. So this model class is defined over here. And we in Java we call that an entity. So if you see here, @entity has been declared. And also we are saying which table it is connected to. So user model is connected to users table. So we are giving that over here. And similarly, like in all the APIs, we will have entities for different. So different entities will basically, like user related entities will go inside user resource. If there is any other entity, let's say company, that will go inside company folder entities. Okay. And then there are also few other directories like repositories, request response service, validations. I think we'll take a walk through. I think we'll take one example of like writing an API which will cover all these aspects. So this was kind of mainly the structure, and then there is also a config folder where different kind of configurations are done. App like application level configurations are done, and there is some standard library lib folder also, which has some standard libraries. So, and the test folder then has tests for everything. So if there is a folder corresponding to that, there will be a test folder inside resources. So you can see here that there is employee controller test, integration test, repository test, service test. So this is mainly the folder structure. And also inside, if you see inside SRC main, there is another folder called resources. So this resources folder has application properties, which is like a configuration for the application. And then there are some migrations inside this db.migration folder. So all the migrations are supposed to be added to this db.migration. Okay, so this was like kind of an overview of how it is structured. Now we can probably go through writing one of the APIs. Okay, so what API do we write? Do we write simple thing like a to-do or something, Praveen? You have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, we can basically do something.
Okay. So to do a to-do, first of all, you have to create a migration, right? So for that, one second, let me just see that. So first we'll add a migration. I'll just show you how to. Is anyone pinging something here? Is the migration generated automatically? No, Mercy, not right now. It is not generated automatically, but I'll add a script in some time. Just one second. Let me. Oh shit. Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. So right now you have to write the migration manually. We'll automate that. We'll write a script to generate the migration. So right now you will just write a manual migration. We'll just copy. So migrations, right? We are using a tool called Flyway with Spring Boot. That's what we are using for migrations. In this tool, we generally like write a SQL script. We don't write it in JavaScript or Java. We write it in pure SQL. So I'll just copy and create one here, and I'll show you how to write it. So we'll say create to-dos table. So I just copied an existing script. Here we can change the table name. So this is like pure PostgreSQL syntax. You can give ID, you can keep ID as it is. Name also, I think we can change it to description. And I think we don't need company other thing. And we'll have two columns for one for created at, one for updated at. Okay. So we created this. Now we also need to create a model class. So for that we have created a script. Okay, so for that, so there is a script called create entity.sh that will create the model class. So here you need to give model class name. So we'll call it as to-do. You also need to give table name. One second. Before that, so we need to create a resources folder as well, right, for the to-dos. So the API folder will just, there is a command to generate that. Create resource dot, we'll call it to-dos. So this basically what it does is it generates a folder structure for the to-dos API. So if you see here, it has created all the standard folders for each of the class. So now we'll go and create the entity, model entity. So we need to give like the three parameters: the table name, resource name, and the class name. So the table name here is to-dos, resource name is also to-do, and class name we want to keep as a to-do. So it would have created an entity called to-do.java. So in this we are adding the basically whatever the standard columns, we are adding that ID, created it and updated it. If you are adding any next extra column, you need to add them. Also there are, if you see here, right, on the class there are few kind of helper kind of annotations. So one is like entity, so this is declaring that this is a database entity. And then there are few other helpers from, there is a library called Lombok basically we are using, which kind of makes it little easy to write the entity. So getters and setters for this properties will automatically be generated. Constructors will automatically be generated, and also there will be a builder pattern for this. And also we are adding something called auditing entity listener over here, which will automatically fill in this created date and updated date. We don't have to manually give this. So whenever the record is getting created or updated, Hibernate will basically, we are using the ORM that we are using is called Hibernate. So that will automatically take care of this. Okay. So now we need to add the description column. So we'll just add that. So to add a column, you just need to add this annotation called column, and you can say here private string description. And now we need to the migrations will automatically run when you start the app, so no need to run migrations right now. We'll create an API. Let me see, did we create anything for that? No, I think right now there is no helper script for that, so we'll just manually copy one of the controllers. Let me just copy employee controller. We'll call this to-do controller. And inside the to do controller, if you see here, right, there are three things. Like one is REST controller. So this means that this is how the Spring Boot understand that this is a controller that is supposed to handle the APIs. And we are also using a few things called validated and transactional. This maybe we can go into detail little later about this. So here we'll just clean up.
That one first, sir. That one.
Yeah, sorry, Anuj.
Remove.
Okay, sure, we'll remove them right now. Okay, and I think we'll remove other dependencies as well right now. I think we'll just create to eat out completely. So to create the to do, first of all, right now we'll just create a simple thing, post mapping. And right now we will just return a simple, we'll right now not even touch the DB or anything, we'll just return a message saying that to do created. Create to do, and we'll not even right now take any parameters. This is just to show you guys how to create a sample route, and we'll just return something saying to do created. Okay, and we'll start the app. Okay, I think one of my Docker containers is running. I'll have to kill them. Just a second, we'll also check that nothing else is running. Okay. Yeah, so it's starting up the API. If you guys have any question in between, feel free to ask them. Okay, so I think there is some error in doing this. Okay, so it's saying you have found more than one migration with version 7. So in the migration I had to change this to version 8. So in Flyway, the tool that we are using for migrations, right, and this is what like Spring Boot also uses, there is no option to like automatically, like how in SQLize we have that timestamp in front of the migration, right? There is no way to do that. Maybe we can add something like that on our custom script, but for now we'll just use this 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 incrementing number for this. So we'll just do this, and we'll also start it again. Okay, what happened over here? Hmm. Did not get saved or something. One second, I'll just check. I think V8 only, right? I think we'll have to clean it or something probably. Okay, so if you see here, right, it's saying migrating schema public to version 8, create to do stable. So it has applied one migration, whichever was the new migration. So now we can see actually in the database also. So I'll just show you.
By default, Spring Boot uses the port number 88.
Yeah. So if you see here, right, there is a table called to dos that is created. We can see that it is created. This columns ID, UUID, description text, and created it and updated it, which are timestamps. So the table has been created. Now also endpoint that we had exposed, we can see that, but I think we did one mistake over here. So we did not give it any route, so it doesn't know where to go. So we need to change that and say /to dos, and we need to restart our API. And right now if you see, I'm kind of manually restarting. There is a tool to kind of what to do, like hot reload, how we do it in like Node.js, but we have to yet figure that out, how to use it properly. Okay, so the post mapping is there. Now let's see if we can create this also. To call this API, there is one interesting thing. Localhost 8080. So automatically this provides we are using Swagger for generating the API documentation. So whichever API you add, automatically it will add a document for that, and also you can interact with the API from here. So you can see that there is a post to dos route, and we can try it out from here itself. We can execute this. What is it saying? Can't parse JSON raw result. Yeah, so basically I'm returning a string, right? So it's saying can't parse JSON, but it's saying to do created. So that new route is basically working successfully. Now we can add more things like actually creating a to do. So now in order to create the to do, we need to save it in the database. So for that we need to create a something called repository. So in Hibernate, and so we are using Hibernate and JPA. So there are two technologies, like Hibernate is the actual ORM, and JPA you will also hear being used. So JPA is like something on, it's like a standard API on top of Hibernate. So Java has come up with a standard like database access API for the ORMs. So behind this one, if you later sometime, let's say you want to switch from Hibernate to some other ORM, you can do that. So that's why you will hear me using these two words, JPA and Hibernate. But right now for us, we can assume it to be working together. So we just have to, right now repository also will just copy from one of the thing. So in the repos folder, we'll post this. We'll call this to dos repository. And here what you have to do is, if you see here, this is just an interface in Java, and it is extending from something called JPA repository. So this JPA repository, Spring is exposing this JPA repository. So automatically it will have all the capabilities to save the resource and find the resource and everything from DB. We don't have to write any manual queries or any manual code for this. So only thing you have to do is you have to tell it like which model class this repository is for. So in the declaration, in generics here, you have to say that. So I'll say to do, we'll choose our model class over here. Okay. And right now we'll there is also another part like where we'll actually call a service. But for now, just to do it quickly, we'll skip that and we'll directly call the repository from the controller. So to inject, right, like we'll create a constructor over here. So we'll say public to do controller.
You go back to this one.
What is
Dhiren,
it? Yeah,
Go back to the repository
yeah, sure.
and parameter that you
Uh-huh.
write, you need to provide the primary key.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so this is the model and this is the primary key data type, as I said. Yeah. So if you're using integer, then in that case it will be integer, but here we are using UUID as a primary key. So just inject this repository over here. And I'm using IntelliJ, right? So in IntelliJ, like there are lots of options to write the code like much faster. So in the constructor, I am just declaring that this is the parameter. Now I want to create a field corresponding to that in my class. So I can just say create field and it will create a field here. So basically this here we are using something called dependency injection. So we are not, if you see here, we are not doing new of to-dos repository. We are just taking a repository as a parameter in the constructor, and Spring Boot framework will basically inject it for here. So while writing the test, we can pass a mock repository if you want to write test and not do the actual DB access. So that flexibility is being given by the Spring framework.
You don't
Which one?
constructor based dependency injection every time. This Lambok already provide one annotation. Use that one required.
Okay.
We don't need to.
Yeah, you're saying this one, right? Required arcs. Yeah, I think we'll come to that later. Probably we can cover Lombok also in, I think, one of the calls.
Okay.
So yeah, so now using this repository, we'll create an actual this thing, and we'll also return response entity. So for now, we'll in Spring generally you return whenever you are creating something, you also return something, right? So as a response, we'll return the DB model only for now, but later I'll show you what is a better way to do it. So we'll just, what we need to do is we need to take a parameter here now, right? So we are, as a post request body param, we need to take a parameter. So let me just open employee controller for the reference. Right, so you need to say employee at the rate request body, and let's see if we can take the to do itself as a body. I think we can do that for now. So we'll take right now, we'll just take just to do it quickly, we'll just take the to do DB model itself as a request parameter here, and then we'll save it to do repository. Save to do. So if you see here, right, the repository, in the repository we did not define any method, but this save method is coming from the super class that it is extending from, called JPA repository. And before saving it, we also need to assign it an ID. So to do dot set ID, we'll set a random UUID, and we'll save it, and then we will, so we'll get back, and from this we will get back a saved object, database object. So we'll just return that saved object, and here we need to kind of what we doing? Response. Yeah, so we need to wrap it into something called response entity. So first argument is the object itself, and here then you need to give the status. So we'll say TTP status dot created. Okay. So we'll again restart the API. You guys are all kind of familiar with this much, right? Since you've gone through the training videos, the routes and REST controller and all. Guys? Marcy, Emmanuel, Arjun, are you all three like familiar with these concepts, right? Okay.
We are familiar with this concept, but
Oh.
I think, however, it's still good at referring to them.
Okay, okay. Let me know if something is like not very clear, like then I can explain it in detail. Okay. So let's try to create this now. So again refresh this. Now here you can see, right, that it is taking this kind of request body, it is automatically generating what is the request body. So if we try it out, it will automatically fill these things for us. And I'll just say training call is one of the to do. And I don't actually have to give this, so I'll remove this. This ID also we don't have to give, so we'll remove that as well. We'll execute this. So it is returning us something, it is returning us a response 201, right? And we can see in the database also. So if we do select all from to-dos, we can see that one of the to-do has been created and the timestamp has been assigned to that. Clear so far, guys? Okay. So this was a very simple way to like create this. Similar to that, we can even write a route to fetch the to-dos, the list of to-dos, and then later we will come to how to do it properly in a proper manner. So let me just write one get route for this right now. So public response entity, for now I'll write a question mark. So we'll return all the to-dos saved in our database as a response. So we'll say to-dos repository dot find all. So this find all will return the list of all the to-dos saved in database, and we'll return this list. We'll say return new response entity to-dos, and we'll say http status dot. Okay. Okay, and in some of the cases, basically Java can kind of infer like what you are returning, so you don't always need to specify the type. Or if I want, I can have even specify this, the list of to-do. We'll again restart the API. Okay, we can refresh our like documentation page, and now you can see that there is a get request also being shown up in the documentation. So we can try that out. What happened over here? Okay, it's saying access denied.
Parameter is not given.
Uh,
But URL in the get request.
Oh, okay. Again, I did the same mistake. Right. So I think to prevent this mistake, basically you can actually kind of give a. There is a way to give it at the controller level also, right, Anush? The route.
Which one?
Like
It's the rest.
yeah,
Rest. It's the rest map. Okay.
REST mapping. Huh?
This, I'll tell you 1 minute.
Okay.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah, request map.
Request map. Okay. What can you do here? How do you use it?
This one. Plus
Acha. You used it before, no?
plus 2. Yeah.
To-dos. Okay. So manually now I think we don't have to give this everywhere. restart the APIs. Meantime, I'll also just check that Rust.
That is correct. That is correct.
That's how it's done, no? Okay,
Yeah.
request mapping, yeah, correct. Okay. Okay, so we can refresh this. Yeah, now you see, right, that it is actually the route is now coming up properly. So we can execute this and we can see that it is returning a list over here of the to-dos that has been created here. So this is how to do this simple thing. We can even add one more mapping to get the actual. So now we can here now I think we can nest the mapping to get the with the to-do ID. So we'll get a specific to-do. So we can say public get single to-do, and we can give it a parameter. It's a query param, right? Anush, you remember what was that?
Request query.
Request query.
Request param. Yeah, request param.
Request param. So in the route we'll give this and we'll call it
Bracket name
string.
of the parameter if you want to give.
Where is that? Here, huh?
Yeah, bracket.
Name is supposed to be ID. Okay. And we'll return a single to-do over here. And we can just simply say return response entity to-do we can find from the to-do repository dot. Okay, find one was there or
IP there should be IP. ID there is a
find by ID is there.
yeah.
Okay, so there is a find by ID and we can give it the ID, and this ID will have to make UUID versus a UUID, and then we can say, so if you see here, right, I'll actually take this out in a different line. So if you see here, this find by ID is returning an optional object. So this is kind of indicating that this is an optional object. This may or may not have the value. Spring may or may not find any value for this. So for now, I think we'll just go at what is that? Else throw or something, right? Or
Yeah, you can check the each present.
yeah, there is also this exception throwing mechanism. So if we can also say that if it is not found, then throw an exception. So for now, we'll just use that. So or else throw will directly return the to do. So and then we can return this. Okay. So now if you see here, there is another this thing exposed called get to slash ID. So we can try this out. So in the database, this is the to do ID. I'll copy that. And we'll give this as a parameter. So if you see here, this is returning a single to do. Right, so this is normal basically CRUD, your create, read, update, delete. We have not covered update and delete, but I think they are also pretty similar only. So any questions so far? Otherwise we will move to the next part. Okay guys, so, yeah.
I'm happy to find section error message. For example, when it
Mhm.
doesn't find any deduced by the ID,
Yeah.
rather than throwing error like that, we have to define error information.
Yep. I'll cover that like when we in the next part. That's what I was going to cover.
Right.
Okay, so now we'll go to the next part where we'll see how to. This is like very quick way to do this, but there's not a completely proper way to do this. So I'll take you guys to do this in a very proper way. So we already have the routes, right? So we'll first refactor this, create to-do route. So if you see the problem here, right, that is basically we are using the DB object itself as a request body. And that can get, there are two problems with that. One is like for the documentation itself, it is little confusing. So if you see the automated documentation here, right, you'll feel like you need to pass the ID and you will also need to pass created error and updated, right? Because the documentation doesn't know, it's automatically generating the documentation from whatever request param you are taking. So it's little confusing. And then second problem, bigger problem is, let's say anytime later in the database, if we decide to change the column name, for example, let's say I change the description to something else, then I am breaking my API contract, right? I can't change my table column name without breaking my APIs because I have coupled my DB model with my request parameter body. So to prevent this kind of problem, we'll use something called a mapper pattern. So in a mapper, basically what we'll do is we'll create another class called to-do request, and that to-do request basically will map from to-do request, we'll create a to-do. So the to-do request will have only specific fields required to to-do. So I'll just show you guys how to do that. So for that you need to write a class called, first of all we need to write another class called to-do request. So there is, if you see, there is already a folder for writing this kind of requests. So we will just copy this for now and say to-do request, and I'll also actually see the employee request as a reference. I'll just take this here. You don't need any of this. Call this as to-do request. So we needed description, right? Description was the parameter that we needed. And yeah, we don't need anything other than description in the request itself, right? We are creating the ID by ourselves. So here you can say private string description, and you can give this like we're using this library called Lombok, as I told you, right? So it will automatically generate getters and setters for this. So in Java, whenever you are writing kind of a DTO, this is a DTO class, like data transfer object. So whenever you using this kind of class, you may have to write getters and setters, but Lombok kind of takes care of that. So it automatically generates all that for you. Otherwise you will have to write things like this, like public string get description. Yeah.
Is this like an interface class?
No, this is just a class. It's not an interface. It's a plain class. It's a class without any methods. It's a class with only properties. Yeah. And if you see here, we are using this Lombok as a dependency. I can just show you like basic thing about Lombok, but we'll take a separate class about that. So I'll just ping you guys. So in the meantime, whenever you get free time, you can check this out. But so we don't need to write any methods over here. It will automatically generate everything for us. So this is just a plain class, right? We're just taking whatever we actually required. So this is kind of closely representing the JSON that we want as a request parameter. So now we'll go to the to-do controller here, and we'll say that we want to-do request over here, and we can say response entity. So for response entity also we can create, same problem can happen with response entity also, right? Like let's say we change the column name, in database, automatically the API response will also change, which means whoever is consuming the API, their contract will break. So we don't want to do that as well. So we'll create another class called to do response, similar to do requests. So this also I'll copy and put it into response. We'll call it to do response. So in to do response, we want like these things, right? We want created at, updated at, everything actually. So we'll just copy these things.
Another advantage of response is that we can prevent one data member by returning the response of the controller. We don't want to return all the things to the user.
Right. Yeah, like we want to like hide some things or limit some things, right? We can do that. Yeah, so for now we'll return everything right now. So in to do response, we are returning everything, the ID, description, and created at, updated at. So here we'll see. Now, first of all, the question is now to do request has to be, because the repository is going to take a to do, not to do request. So we need to convert this to do request to an actual to do. So for that, first I'll show you a manual way, and then I'll show you a better way to do it. So right now, what we'll just do is we'll create a to do from a to do request. So we'll say to do equal to do equal to new to do, and we'll set basically ID we are already setting now. We also need to set the description from this to do request. To do dot set description, to do request dot get description. So if you see here, right, the get description method kind of automatically got added. That is because of this data annotation that we are using. We have not actually added this method, it was generated for us. And then we got the to do. So the created at and updated at, we don't need to do anything. The database will take care of adding those. Now we can change this also. Now we need to return a to do response. So for that, we have got the saved to do from the database. Now we need to convert it into a to do response. So for that, we'll create a to do response class object. So to do response equal to new of to do response, and we'll say to do response dot. Now we need to set everything, right? So we'll say to do response dot set ID to save to do dot get ID. Same thing we need to, what is it saying over here? This is not public. Why is it not public? I think we made some mistake over here maybe. Let's see if public class. Okay, I think okay, I see. So we are using a builder pattern, right? So we don't need to do new of to do. It's a to do response dot build, and then we can set things on top of that. For now, I think,
Just one question.
yeah, sure.
In JavaScript, we
Mhm.
have the structure in a spread of methods.
Right.
Whereby it sets all this is rather than
Yeah.
set description.
Yeah. So here, I mean, yeah, there is no destructuring as such in Java. So you can't do that, but we'll come to that. For now, we'll just map all this. Even this, for example, right now, actually, I'll add the constructor to this. What is that constructor thing? Or we'll just add a manual constructor here. To do response. I don't want to write all this, we'll just write plain like Java code. To do response dot set ID, to do response dot set description, so save dot get description, to do response dot set created it, so saved, get created it, to do response dot set updated it. So in this response entity, right, we are mapping all the fields that we are getting from the database, and then we will return this instead of the say database entity. So we need to change this also, saying that we are returning a to-do response. So I'll just make some line breaks so it's kind of clear to you guys. Right, so we are first like setting up the to-do database object, then we are saving it to the database and we are getting the saved object back, and then we are mapping it to the to-do response class. So this both classes that we are using, right, in Java terminology they are called POJOs because they are like plain old Java object. This is the, you Google for this, right, POJO Java. So POJO stands for plain old Java object, like which doesn't have any kind of methods or anything. It just has like plain properties and there is nothing else in that. It's like a plain object, that's all. So we are returning the to-do response POJO and we are taking to-do request POJO as a request parameter. Now we can run this API. Then I'll show you like this kind of, you can see this, right, that this kind of gets little quite tedious actually. So if there are like more fields, I have to map each field manually, which can get little tiring if you have to do this in many of the APIs. So but first let's run this and see. Okay, what happened over here? Okay, it's saying constructor cannot be applied to Q1 types. Okay. So to do response, actually we can remove all this data. There is all args constructor, right?
Yeah, all are. And no
No args constructor. Actually, I think we need to add just no args constructor. I think required is also not required.
What is the use case of no arg?
It is like an empty constructor which doesn't assign or anything basically.
Okay.
Actually, it's saying it's already defined. Okay, for now, what we'll do is we'll remove the Lombok dependency also. One second. Flat getter setter for everything since it's giving errors. Anyways, Lombok we are covering in another class. So for now I've manually just created this getters and setters. Okay, so now we'll refresh our Swagger UI. So here you can now see, right, that create to do, the schema is also understanding that it only needs a description to create a to do. So we'll just try that out. We'll say that description Lombok class is a to do. So okay, what is happening here? It's saying failed to read request 400 bat request. Okay, I think we have probably not given one of the annotations properly. Okay, given request body to do request. To do request, we are taking a string. This is a post mapping on to do's. Okay. Let me see if it is throwing any.
In the console?
Yeah, I'll see. It's saying cannot construct instance of to do request at least one creator access, cannot deserialize from object value. I think here also Lombok is creating probably some issue. For now we'll just construct this into
Just give the no arg.
I think that is not also, let's try that. Okay, but what is it saying? If no args is there, then builder needs a proper constructor. I think we need required.
All args and no args.
Okay. Okay. No, all args, no arg and required args constructors. Huh?
Yeah. No. Remove builder from there.
Okay. One second, let's try with this no, once. This is not working, we'll do that.
Yeah, remove builder from there.
I think builder is creating the issue. Okay, here also it is going
I have
crazy.
implemented.
Constructor to do request is already defined. Okay, let me create for now. I'll just remove everything. Just do it manually.
No, in the request only give data, all and more. Give once.
Okay, we'll try that. What are you saying? Huh?
Data,
Okay.
all constructor and more constructor.
Okay.
Remove, yeah, nothing.
Okay.
In the response,
Huh.
data, all are more constructor.
Okay. The data you are saying. Data it's anyways. Response anyways I have converted to plain Bojo only, so no need to use any patterns.
Okay.
Okay, so it started this. Create right out. Give anything ABC. Okay, so it has created the to do as you can see here, right? So now we are kind of free to, like, let's say I want to change the database column name to something else, right? Let's say in to do I want to, instead of description, I want to call this like text. Then what I can do is I can go to my controller. Here you can see that this is breaking, right? At the compile time it is detecting that now there is no field called description on to do. So I need to say set text. But it's still coming from the request description parameter only. You guys got that part? So I'm still not breaking my API, and also I'm able to change my column name easily because we are using this mapping pattern. Is that clear, guys?
Mercy and Navjit.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just revert this back right now. Now if we saw here, right, this is kind of getting like long to do this mapping. So there is a better way to do the mapping. So we'll just use that. So there is something called mapper that we are using. So we are using this library called mapstruct. So if you see here, for one of the entity we have done this mapping already. So there's this library called mapstruct. So what you do is basically you just define an interface and you say like from which class to which class you want to do the mapping. So we'll just do it right now for our to do class. So for that also there is a directly called mappers in resources. So we'll just paste the mapper over here. We'll call it to do mapper. And yeah, so here you need to write like to do to. So I need to say like which direction. So I basically I take a to do as an input and I'll return a to do response. So I'll say to do here and to do response. Okay. I'll just quit my Slack. And here similarly we need to say that I'll take a to do request and I'll return a actual to do object, database object. So we'll say to do request to do. Okay.
Sorry, I missed the mapper. Please could you repeat
Yeah, I'll come. Yeah, sure. So So we are using this library called mapstruct, which makes it easy to do the mapping. So you just declare, basically you use this annotation called mapper, and you create a Java interface, and interface you just give two methods. You give a method called to do response. So it is converting the database to do object, right, to the to do response which we want to return as a response. And then you add another method called to do request to do. So it is converting a to do request into a to do object. So taking the request object and it is converting it into a database object. So we are doing both the ways mapping. And this mapping is kind of, it will automatically do this mapping. It will automatically generate whatever is the required code. I'll just show you that in a bit also. So if you come here in the to do controller, right, now I can simply say, I don't need to do all this. I can simply say that this instance, so I can use that. So I can declare a to do mapper over here, private to do mapper. And I can use it like this, to do. So I'll just show you the new code below so you guys can see how much code it is saving. To do mapper dot, okay, one second, we need to do here to do mapper equal to do mapper dot. So we want to convert a request, right? So to do request. Just comment out this code. And yeah, of course we need to set this to do dot set ID. We still need to do. So you see here, right? There is no need to do this set description. That is automatically being done by the mapper. And here also we'll write the new code instead of this. So we'll say to do response equal to do mapper dot, we just provided the saved database object. So we can comment this out. So you can see that this 4 lines, right, it is automatically doing it here. And we can compile this, we can restart the API and see that it's still working. Okay. So we'll create a to do XYZ, and you can see that in the response we got 200 okay, and the to do is actually created here, yeah, sorry, right? So you can see here, so it is kind of doing the mapping for us. Now if you see how it's doing it, actually behind the scenes, if you see, it is kind of, so there is a generated directory. So in Java all the generated classes goes into a targeted directory. So it is automatically generating a implementation of the to do mapper class that we defined. And if you see here, it is doing all these things that we were earlier doing manually. Right, I'll just split this so you guys can see this better. So whatever code we were writing manually, right, you can see here that it is writing it for us. But it is writing it behind the scenes, so we don't have to worry about it. We just write the interface, it will automatically generate this implementation class. So this library is called mapstruct. I'll just ping you guys the link. This is the Java Bean mapping library. See here that they are also kind of giving the example in a similar way. Is it clear, guys? Any questions on this?
Please, could you go back to the Wi-Fi interface?
Sure. So that was here. So this is the interface class.
One question is, to do mapper.class, where is he getting it from?
So it knows how to basically whenever you are doing this, right? So we are you are saying to do mapper.instance. So here we are, the instances actually it is doing calling this method of that map struct saying map struct mappers.getMapper for this class. So it knows that it has generated this implementation class and it has to use that and not the interface.
Okay.
So here what you are getting actually, even though this is here the declaration is the interface, but the actual instance, right? So in Java we have this concept of inheritance. So you can use any subclass as a and any superclass. Basically you can use a subclass instance. So your declaration can be the superclass, but the actual instance stored into that will be of a subclass.
Okay. I was thinking in this to-do mapper, we are going to outline out the request body, all the data we are expecting to be in the request body. Like set ID, set description,
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, so that library basically does that for you. So you don't have to basically, because how it's doing it, it knows, right, that the field names are the same. So in this to do also there are these fields, and to do response also there are these fields. So based on the names, it's automatically generating all that code for you. If the names are different, yeah. So if the names are different, then you will have to still write some extra code. So in some of the entities, I think I have written that custom code also. I'm not sure which one it is. I think I have not done it here, but you can see it in that example. So here if you see, right, they have got car.java and car.dto.java. So in car there is a number of seats, but in car.dto it is called seat count. So other things are the same, but this parameter kind of differs them. So they are doing a mapping here saying that in the source it is called number of seats and the target it is called seat count. So you can declare this kind of things whenever the names are different.
Okay. This makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Just a minute, guys. I'll just get some water. So we'll just clean up this code. And I think the next refactoring step to this code basically is to move all this code to a service. So generally, right, the architecture that we are following is that you will have a controller to declare your routes, and then you have your repositories to handle your database access. Then you will also have something called service, which will handle your business logic. So you don't put all this business logic basically into your controller classes. So if you see here, right, setting the ID, and on top of that we might be doing a few things. So we don't want to kind of mess up the controller and have too much code in the controllers. We want controllers to be pretty simple. So we'll introduce something called a service. So all this logic will put inside a service. Only thing we'll do in controller is we'll take the request body, we'll map it, and then we'll return it. So if you see one of the this thing, so there is already in template we have something called employee controller. So if you see here, it is creating an employee, but it is just doing a mapping here at the controller level, and actual creation logic it is delegating to something called employee service. So we'll do the same thing for the to do as well, right? So let me just create a to do service. For now I'll just copy the employee service that Anuj just created. I think for services we'll need to create a folder. We'll call this to do service. So in service, right, service is nothing but, so in the Spring, I mean, we know the service pattern, right, that we have been using in Node.js. So it's very similar to that only. The only thing is you have to declare it as a service. So Spring Boot has a dedicated support for services. So you just tell Spring Boot that this is a service class. So you use this annotation called @service. And in the service, then you just write the similar kind of code. So we'll say here to do repository. to-dos repository, and we don't want this. And I'll say we'll move this, right? Okay, let me actually just keep this to do here to do need to import this. So we have created this method called create to do, which takes a database model object, sets the ID, saves it, and returns it. And now in the to do controller, what we need to do is we'll still do the mapping, because mapping is kind of it is like specific to the controller, because controller knows that this is my request, so controller should do the mapping. And here we'll say we'll import the to do service over here. We don't need the repository anymore, so we can remove the repository. To do service. And we'll say for example, right now we'll just comment this out. And I think I'll keep the to do repository as well. 1 second. And now we'll keep both actually, to do repository and service. Here we will say to do service, create to do. Okay. We'll just run this code as well. So I can just try it out. I'll say 1, 2, 3 now. So it's still creating the to do. It's here in the response, right? So we moved the actual code. So now if any more complex code has to be there, right? Any more complex business logic has to be there. It can all go inside this to do service.create to do. So this was that part. What else is there? Anuj, do you think we should cover anything else?
Go back to just see employee controller.
Employee controller?
Let's say, yeah.
Huh?
Just give the example of get in to by this one description name, because the get description name by the get description is not part of the JPA, na?
Huh.
They need to declare one extra method.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'm just saying that we'll add one more route called get to do by its description. So we'll see how to do that. So we'll first declare the mapping. Here we'll say to do's there will not be any ID, no? It will have to be a query parameter, I think.
Descriptions.
Acha, you're saying like this, descriptions.
Slash.
No, Anuj, but we cannot do that, no? That will conflict with this because it will think that it's an ID. I'm not sure if that will work. Because the route will conflict. So you already have a route called ID, right? So anything after slash, basically it's thinking that it's an ID. So it will think that description also is an ID.
No. Slash.
Acha, you're saying it like this.
Yeah, description name.
Okay. I'll just call it name for now.
Or like
like in the JavaScript, like similarly, if suppose we are like putting this like description in upper side of the ID, then I think maybe it's work properly.
Okay. So this should work, right? We'll just try it out. We'll see.
Yeah, this is work. But suppose like if you are
Ah.
just remove this name, if you
Ah.
want to do description, then you need to put it in upper side of the get.
Like uppercase you're saying, like this you're saying?
No.
Not
Just,
upper side.
no. Right small plus D, and just remove name. Just remove name.
Okay,
The
one.
URL.
Okay, how are you saying it?
Yeah, and just cut and put inside the line number 42. This API inside the 42 line number.
Oh, this API inside this you're saying.
No. In the line number 49, your API the get maybe description.
Ah.
You need to put this API upper side of the ID API.
Acha, like, yeah, are you saying it like how?
Upper side.
Pura entire method you are saying will write here?
Yes.
Acha, no, it will not work over here. Or it doesn't care about the order basically. But this,
JavaScript like node is something open in this.
yeah, that is little different. Yeah, we'll try it out. I think later if you want to try it out, we can do that. But right now we'll just go with this. So to return, so we need to return a to do, right? So we'll still returning a to do, and we'll say get to do by description, and you want this also to be a request param, no? Okay, and this is actually in description, right? So we'll just call it description. So description.
In the request,
Hmm.
yeah, you can change the description to other name also.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. For now, we'll keep it the same. We'll return. So now to return, like how to find by this description, right? So if we see on the repository, you will not find anything to do this. So you need to, in the repository, now you need to declare a method. So we'll go to the repository and we'll do here public optional to find by. You've done this in another user repository, no?
Yeah. Just like find by description.
Find by description, yeah. So string. So basically what will happen is, like, you just have an interface and we are writing this method called find by description. So our ORM framework, right, Hibernate, will convert this into a SQL query, and it knows that there is a description column on the to do table, so it knows which column to connect it to. So let's use this. Now it is available, so we'll just pass it the description and we'll return this to do. I think there was also another question from Emmanuel about how do you like give a custom error message, right? So I think next we'll cover that part. First let's do this, or else throw I'll use here. So this is actually a to do, right? And also in Java, like now we are using Java 17, right? So you don't need to actually every time you don't need to give a class name in front of the variable. You can just use something called var, and we can return the new response entity to do. Let's copy it from here. Status dot.
No.
Okay. Right. Okay, we'll just start this. Okay. Just refresh our documentation. We'll see if we got the new route. So, okay, so it is showing it like this: to slash description. Okay. We'll see what we have got in the database. So let's see. We'll try to get it for ABC. Let's try it out. ABC. Let's see if this works. So yeah, we got the actual, right? So if you see ID is 0 to 1, so this is the same to do that we are returning. And also I think, let me see if I have that SQL thing on. So here you can see, right, that it is actually generating a query. Select from to-dos where to-do.description equal to the question mark, the parameter. So it is actually generating based on this thing that we have written. It is automatically generating this query. So any model that and we can even make this combined. So we can even say find by description and ID also, if you want to say, we can say that. So let's say you are passing 2 parameters, you can do that as well. Let me add that string ID. Now we need to add a query param. And so let me see the example of query param. Okay, I think we'll just give it here. So this is a request param and another will take a query param.
Query.
It was a request
Request
query.
query.
Okay. Request query. Have you used it in the query?
No, I think query param. Query. Not request query.
I'll just search for that.
Query.
Achha, just query you're saying?
1 minute.
I can just see.
You
But now
are
just
taking
add this.
1 minute.
Yeah.
So,
Description and ID. Request. Using request param only.
request query.
Request param only they are saying.
Okay. I have used this one. I don't know where.
Yeah, I think I'll also use it. Forgetting now. So we are good now. Find it or use
Yeah,
types.
it's request param.
Request param only, no? Yeah.
Yeah.
So fine, we'll use request param as a this thing. String ID. Restart this.
I don't know one thing. Then what is the difference between request param?
And query, right? There is something like that. I'm forgetting that right now. Okay. So okay, here it is actually taking both as a query param only, Anuj, I think. Request param is a query param, no? So it's taking both as a query param only.
Okay, got it. If you specify that one curly bracket, no? Yeah, that will assume as a.
Okay. Right now you can.
Yeah, if you don't specify it, it will assume as a query param. Got it.
Okay.
Now you have specified curly param. That's why it is assuming this is a request param.
Let's see. Here we'll come to the anyways. For now, we'll just stick to this. So we need it by ID and description both, right? So we'll give the ID as this, description as ABC. Now if I do this, okay, because I gave a wrong data type, so it's failing, saying it cannot convert string to UUID because this is a UUID. So I need to take UUID. Okay, what is it saying? It cannot be converted to a string.
I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, no, here also we need to, yeah, correct. So, okay, we can do it from here itself. So in IntelliJ, right, you got like very useful things like this. So here it is showing that this is an error. Why? Because it's a the repository is expecting a string because we have still not changed that, and we are passing UUID from here. So you can just click on this. You can press Alt Enter, and it will give you suggestion on how to fix this. So I can say that change the second parameter of method find by description ID from string to UUID, and it will fix it. So if you go and see here, right, it has automatically converted this into UUID. So I'll restart the API. Okay. Try it out. Description ABC. What is this? Okay, so you can see here that it is returning this, and also you can see here that it is generating a query where saying where ID description equal to this and ID equal to that. So automatically this framework is generating the queries. We are not manually writing the queries. Based on the method name, it is writing a SQL query. So the next question could be that what if there are like some complex queries, right? So if your query is like bit more complex, we can cover that a little bit right now. So you can write a custom query here. You can say things like select from this thing to do's. You can give a custom query here. Basically, we will not go into too much detail of this, but you can write a custom query here. That support is also there when your queries get little more complex. And in future, we are also planning to add, like, there is another library called Juke, which makes it like very easy to write this kind of like complex queries. So we'll cover that later. So this was the basic of this. There is another question that Emmanuel was asking about how to return custom errors. So we'll come to that, right? So let's say now let's say to do is not yeah, Anush.
Till now, right now,
Yeah.
so for this one, the error handling thing, na,
Uh-huh.
and the that this one,
Well,
validation and
right.
error handling,
Hmm.
we should have a separate call because this is going longer.
Okay.
Already we are 1 hour 40 minutes.
Sure, and we can do that as well. I had done 2 to 4 right now. We still have 20 minutes if you want to. If you guys are not tired, and we can take a small break if required.
So what will cover then?
Error thing we can cover. Well-done also maybe we can cover the basics of that. I think 20 minutes should be sufficient enough. No? Even 10 minutes I think we can cover that.
Okay.
You all want to take a break or something? Small break? Or should we continue? What do you guys think? Is anyone?
For me, I think we should continue.
Arjun?
Yes,
We
the
can-
question,
Yeah.
the question is, Maxi and Arjun, are you getting everything or not? My question is.
So on it, not fully, but like in the partially. So we need like what with I am thinking like after this I could just revise the whole video.
Okay. And for you,
Yes, I think I'm getting everything. Other than what's it called? The custom what's it called? Thing we added in the repository, which is fine by description and ID. I think every other thing is good for me. Yes, that's the start. So I wanted to know how do we connect this to, because it's looking like a query method that we are adding in. So I want to understand how do we define our own query method and all that.
Right. So okay, sure. So that part, Mercy, basically there is a syntax for that. You can refer to the documentation. I'll send you the link to that. Spring Data Repository method naming convention. I think somewhere it's on how to do this. So mainly it's like basically the language you use here, right? You use a English kind of language over here. Like you just say find by description, and then you say and, then you can even say or. And if you're using IntelliJ, it even kind of supports all this. Like you just say oh, it is giving me option to or order by everything. So it's very like English like language, and that there are of course like some rules to that as well. So that is kind of defined in this documentation.
My question is basically it's because defined by description.
Yeah.
We did not define it anywhere.
Right.
We're just calling it like a function and passing string, all the parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where.
Yeah. So JP basically Spring kind of automatically implements this method for us. So we just declare an interface, and the Spring framework will generate a implementation class for this. So because how it's doing it is it knows, right, that there is we are here, right, if you see here in the to-do repository, while extending the JPA repository, we are saying that this to-do repository is of type to-do. So we are connecting our model class to this repository. On that model class, we have got this fields ID and description. So when you say find by description, it knows that on the to-do there is a description field, right? And the to-do is also connected to a table to-dos. So that's how it's able to figure out the entire thing. Is that clear, or is you still have some doubts on that?
Okay, sorry, I was talking on it. So basically, if we have a field in the database called name, meaning
Yeah.
we can also do find by name and
Yeah.
find it here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever fields are there, you can use
Cannot just-
those fields. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't just give anything. Yeah, that's correct. If I give something wrong over here,
Yeah.
let's say I make a typo over here, right? As I said description. Then it kind of automatically knows actually. Not actually. 1 second. I'll use that method. So right now it doesn't say any problem, but if I restart the app, I think it should throw an error. It will not let the app start. It'll say that there is nothing called this description, because it's not matching the model. Yeah, here you see, right, the app did not start. So here it says the error that failed to create now property call this found on type to do. Did you mean description?
Two means description.
Yeah. Yep. So that was that. And now there are two parts like left basically. One is like validation, and second is how do we return like proper errors, right? So let's I think cover validations first. So let's say we want to put a validation saying that to do this thing cannot be empty. You have to say that to do description cannot be empty. And let's say we wanted to have, let's say, minimum few characters. We don't want it to be too short, at least it should have 5 characters. So how do we say that, right? So for that, what you can do is, first of all, you have to add an annotation called validation on this. So let me just see this. So on the controller itself, you can put an annotation called validated. User controller, what did we do? Okay, so on the controller you have to do that and validate it. So it knows that I have to do the validation, and here again you have to add an annotation called valid. So we'll just import that. I think which one is that? I think it is Jakarta validation. Just 1 second, guys. So you add this annotations at the rate valid on the method parameter, and on the controller you add at the rate validated, and then you have to, on the request class that we are taking, right, there itself you can add the validation. So you can use a validation called annotation. So you can say not empty, and I want to have minimum characters, right? So 1 second, I think
There should be
that
something
I
called
do.
length or
Yeah, validation minimum characters limit. What is that? Size, right? Is it size? Yeah, you can use size.
and you can
Yeah, we can also give a message. So we'll say size minimum, let's say 5, and for now we'll not give anything. So we did this, and let's restart this.
change this one description to proper description in the to-do repository.
Yeah, I changed that. So while creating the to-dos, now we have given this criteria. So let's say I'm just giving one character string called A. So when I execute this, right, let's see what are we getting. Oh, what is it? It's still creating it. Okay, so validation is not working, it seems. Did it create it in database as well? Yeah. Okay, so validation didn't really work. We give minimum 5 and not empty. Let's test empty one also. Give an empty description here. Okay, so empty also it is creating. So there's validation is not working. Now why is that? Let's see one of the existing validations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you go to again?
Same. This
So,
one.
why are you saying no usage? Like we are not using this file anymore.
So, this one using.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like if I use somewhere,
Hmm.
say okay, use it.
No, this is just this is my ID that's telling basically that this field is not used anywhere directly, right? So I'm not calling anywhere saying to do request.get to do or something. So in the controller, I'm just taking the entire to do request as that, right? On separately, I'm not doing anything on top of that, because we are using that mapper actually to auto generate the definition. Just ignore that, like that's just my ID thing. That is not important. Okay. So
Just check another
yeah, I'll check. And user controller, we had done the validation, so we are done at the rate valid.
the rate value should be before the request body.
Maybe that is the case. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, where was that? In to do controller. Okay, just try that out. Okay, what is that create to do? Try it out. We'll give empty this thing. Still creating it. That's not working. It's interesting. Okay, we are seeing at the rate. Okay, let's see if let's compare everything else. Giving at the rate data, the rate builder. Let me give a pattern validation and see if I can just put a pattern validation on this. Sorry, the do request. Just to test, I'll put this not a valid mobile number thing. One second, is it not? Just taking the code, right?
Do you think
Just
we
do
need to
clean.
give any annotation after this one?
And
Root
the
level?
on the root level, might be demo application. We have not done anything as such. No, generally it works like this only. We'll see if it doesn't work. We'll see what to do next. Okay, try it out. See here, this is working. So I think there is something wrong with that well-listen itself. So here you see, right, like we have given the well-listen here, we have given a pattern over here.
Okay, go back.
I think we are probably importing from a wrong place or something. See, it is Jakarta well-listen. We have imported. There is a conflicting library, that's why it's getting little confused. Jakarta, right? We had used
Yes.
Java X. Import class Jakarta. Okay.
Remove pattern.
Okay, we'll comment that out. In that one also we use Jakarta only. Is it user request? It's Jakarta only, correct. Okay. So let's give empty string. Okay, now it's working, right? So you can see that it's giving two well-listen errors. Because for description we have added two well-listen, so it's saying that description must not be empty, and again for description it's giving another error saying that size must be between 5 and this is the max limit. So it has to be between that. So this was your question, right? I think Emmanuel was asking this. How do we I think this was this is a well-listen. Now there is another question you were asking was error, but this is also similar to that. So this is like how in Node.js we are returning the response body, right? Similar to that we are also returning here. So the status is false, and we are also returning a proper error code, that is 400 bad request, and we are also returning errors for each of the fields which has a well-listen issue. But basically well-listens you declare it here, and automatically it is converted. And actually for converting also we have it is not like default thing in the Spring. So if you try it out on the default Spring project, right, it will not work like this. You will not get a proper good error like this. You will get some confusing message. So to avoid that, we have kind of implemented that. Where did that go? Rust and exception handler. So we use this in the Spring Boot. There is a support to handle the exception. So we have kind of overridden the well-listen exception, and we have converted that into a bad request, and all the errors also we have converted in the proper format. Okay. But this is just a kind of an implementation detail. Right now you don't really need to understand. You just need to understand that if you give how to write the well-listen. So yeah, that's how it is. And you can even write custom well-listen. Right now I will not write the custom well-listen, but I will show you an example of a custom well-listen. So for example, I wanted to write a custom well-listen for names. So I have added a custom well-listen called valid name. So this has been defined over here. So you have to write two classes if you want to write a custom well-listen. One is the annotation you have to declare by yourself. So you write it like this. This is the annotation syntax. And then there is an implementation of that. There you can actually, you are getting in the callback, you are getting the actual value and then you can do whatever you want to do on that value. So right now here I have just done not null and empty, but you can do whatever pattern matching or any custom code you want to write, you can write. And then that validator I used over here in the name kit. Similarly, you can even write validators at the class level also if you want to write custom validators. That is also possible. But generally, this kind of things are mostly sufficient enough. Like on the request itself, you can write the annotation. So this is very declarative. By looking at the model itself, you know like what all validations are supposed to be followed. Okay. So that is validation. Now the second part, I think we just have 3 minutes left. But okay, we'll see if we can extend by a little, like let's say 5 more minutes. And next things we'll take into our next this thing. So now how do we return a proper custom error, right? So for example, let's say you are trying to find a to-do, but you are not getting back the to-do because there is no to-do by that ID. So what happens at that time, right? So let's try that out first, like what kind of error we are getting right now. So let's say I'm trying out this get to do by ID and I type anything. Let's say I just get, let's say, a random UUID, or I even say just like some random string, right? So here it's saying value must be a valid UUID, so I'll just get a random UUID. Copy this. So it is, if you see here, it's returning like some junk data, right? Which makes like no sense. Like it's returning some stack trace, no value present, and but to user this doesn't make any sense. Or even any client who is using your API, this is not very useful. Like you don't know what to do with this. It just says internal server error and some stack trace, right? So you want to give a proper error message and not this. So to do that, all that you need to do is, I'll just take now. We can return code like this. What was that? One sec. Create company, check company. So I'm changing the wrong method. So equal to, so here we can say to do. So in there is a method called or else throw, that is on optional basically. So you're returning in find by ID, if you see, right, it is returning an optional. So just take this into a separate variable so it's clear to you. So on that optional to do that we are getting back, there is a method called or else throw. So we are using that and we are returning a custom error called new of validation exception. So this is our custom exception that we have written. So if you just do this, I'll just show you, it will return a proper error message. So we'll try this, get this thing. So here you see, right, that this is an error type validation, and it is a, actually this is not a validation error, this is a little wrong, but it's, you can see here, right, it's giving errors and saying that for field ID there is an error and this is the message. This thing is little wrong, we can,
What is wrong with it?
It should not be this thing, no, the error type should be different. So it should be API error response we should be using.
Yeah, that should be API error.
I think that we have not, I'm not sure whether we have used it somewhere. I think we have not corrected it probably at this level, I guess. I think that we have to still do it in the framework. I'm not sure whether I've used it somewhere or not. It's not used, no?
Error type is API. Okay.
I think we have to create a similar, just say well-designed error response है ना, similarly we have to create a API error response.
API error, correct.
That class I have not yet implemented, I think. Okay, I'll implement that later. So you will see that nothing else will change. Only thing you will see is that instead of well-designed, it will be API error. And while throwing the error, you have to write, where is our original code? You have to throw an API exception over here. That is also not there right now. It will introduce that. You have to say API error over here. So that will return an API error. But yeah, this is the pattern to throw a proper error. And you can even, if you can see it actually in some other example, that you can throw, let's say employee service dot create employee, right? So not employee service, user service. So like while creating a user, we are checking like multiple things like email should not exist, mobile should not exist. So for that also we are kind of throwing an exception, and like what is that, get company by ID. So here also we are throwing an exception. So from anywhere else, like anywhere like in your service or anywhere, you can throw an exception of a proper type. Basically you can either throw a well-designed exception or API exception, and it will automatically be caught and it will be converted into a proper error message. Because the way it is structured is, to the exception you have to pass an error, well-designed error, and you have to give it a field and a message. So the framework will convert this into a JSON response. Does it answer your question, Emmanuel? Hello? Emmanuel, are you there?
Emmanuel is not here, only the
Okay,
Martin.
got disconnected. Okay. No, so yeah, anyways guys, so I think this is that for today. Next few concepts we will cover in the next session. So I think in the next session probably we will cover things like we can cover TDD is what I am thinking, and if you guys want to know anything else also, I think we can even create Lombok for one session. And what else is there? Anuj, anything else we should cover?
That Lambo. That Lombok and then the TTT, I think that will be enough.
Okay, and in the meantime, before we do the session, you guys can look at the code. So in the template, there is already a code for like we have written some sample resources. Like there is a resource called employees is there. Then there is also users. So you can look at that code to understand how like it is written, because they have like some little bit of more complex scenarios. Like you can see this like user resources create user, which is creating a user inside something called a company, and it is like checking for multiple things. And there is also like more complex dependency between user and a company, like there is a one to many or many to many relationships between company. So the lot more complex mappings. I think this also Anuj we can cover, right? And next session many to many, and basically relationships I think we can cover. All the relationships we will cover.
How to use DTO.
Yeah. So this joins and all, right? That all also we will cover in next session. But for now you guys can start taking a look at that. And you can even if you want to start taking a look at the test, you can look at the test directory also. So we have added unit test and integration test and everything for all the controllers that are there in the repo. So you can see here, right, that there are some tests which are already there. You can take a look at all this as well. Okay, I'll stop the recording for now. Okay guys, how do I stop the recording? Stop recording.